On a seemingly unremarkable day, July 24th, 1981, siblings Jeff and Jenny found themselves anxiously awaiting the return of their 39-year-old mother, Charlotte. As the hours slipped away, their concern deepened when she failed to arrive. Fearing for her safety, they reached out to the Clark County Police, alerting them to the unsettling possibility that something had befallen their mother. Charlotte and her 42-year-old husband, Fred, had dedicated themselves to managing one of the largest farmlands in Clark County, an expansive 800-acre estate they operated solely together. Their love story began in 1956, blossoming into a swift courtship that culminated in a marriage lasting 23 years. They were blessed with 2 children, their eldest son, Jeff, and their daughter, Jenny, both now in their early 20s. Charlotte, who had embarked on motherhood at the tender age of 15, found herself grappling with challenges far beyond her youthful expectations. The couple's early years were marred by difficulties, with heated disputes becoming a distressingly common occurrence. As children, Jeff and Jenny often took it upon themselves to protect their mother from the brunt of their father's wrath. Fred, a towering figure at 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighing 280 pounds, exuded an intimidating presence that only amplified the tension at home. The whispers of Fred's alleged infidelity, particularly his summer liaison with local bartender Vicky Jane McAllister, had spread like wildfire among the community. Vicky's reputation was far from pristine, adding to Charlotte's distress. Having previously endured a tumultuous divorce around 1961, which lasted a mere year before reconciliation, Charlotte found herself at a breaking point with the arrival of Vicky. Unable to bear the humiliation brought upon her family, she made the decisive choice to expel Fred from their home the moment the news reached her ears. He departed, divorce papers in hand, opting to reside in a modest cabin nestled within the vast expanse of their shared farmland. Jeff and his wife, Cindy, relocated to live with Charlotte shortly thereafter. Their primary concern was ensuring their mother's well-being and care. Charlotte typically spent her days working in the fields, returning home at dusk. However, on the night of July 24th, 1981, tragedy struck the Grabby family when Charlotte vanished without a trace from her home. She had been out on the farm, as was her routine, but this time she did not come back. Growing increasingly anxious, Jeff and Cindy ventured into the fields to search for her. They made their way to the machine shed where the tractor was stored and discovered Charlotte's untouched lunch resting on its wheels alongside her migraine medication. These medications were a constant in the life of the 39-year-old, and she never left home without them. The alarming scene prompted them to contact the authorities. Sheriff James Red Thompson of Clark County arrived at the location of the disappearance, conducting a thorough examination and questioning the couple before proceeding to Fred's residence. Fred lived nearby the shed where Charlotte had gone missing, and given their past, the authorities considered him a potential suspect. He firmly denied any involvement in his ex-wife's disappearance, asserting that he had been at his cabin that morning when Charlotte stopped by for a brief visit. According to him, they had a heated argument, after which she drove off towards the highway. 2 days later, on July 26, 1981, authorities discovered Charlotte's abandoned vehicle just outside the border in Terre Haute, Indiana. There were no signs of a struggle or any clues regarding her whereabouts. The only troubling detail was a handgun found beneath the driver's seat. While it likely served for personal protection, it raises the question of what circumstances might have led Charlotte to feel the need for such a drastic measure. Authorities soon received a call from Charlotte's bank, alerting them to a lockbox she had accessed just 10 days prior to her mysterious disappearance. Within this lockbox lay a collection of handwritten letters, predominantly concerning Fred. In these letters, Charlotte articulated her deep-seated fears and suspicions regarding her unfaithful husband. She hinted at the possibility of him pilfering farm equipment and detailed his violent tendencies towards her. While these letters corroborated Sheriff Thompson's suspicions about Fred, they fell short of providing sufficient evidence to link him directly to Charlotte's vanishing. In light of this discovery, authorities summoned Charlotte's family to inquire about the contents of the letters. Jenny, Charlotte's 21-year-old daughter, courageously revealed unsettling truths about her mother's tumultuous marriage. She recounted the harrowing fact that her mother had wed at the tender age of 15, having begun a relationship with the then 19-year-old Fred, who had exploited her vulnerability, leading to a coerced marriage. By the age of 17, Charlotte was already expecting her first child, Jeff. This troubling foundation of their life together cast a long shadow over the tragic events that would soon unfold. Charlotte endured immense hardship throughout her marriage, suffering from severe physical abuse. Fred had a notorious reputation for his violent behavior, not only towards his wife, but also towards their children. Jenny recalled a particularly harrowing incident. "My brother and my dad were fighting physically, and my dad even took my brother by the side of the head and beat his head into the fender of the pickup." Fred harbored a deep resentment towards his children for siding with their mother, even going so far as to accuse Jeff of conspiring against him. The twisted thoughts that consumed Fred often unleashed a volatile and vindictive side of his character. The couple's remarriage in 1962 only exacerbated the family's turmoil, particularly for Charlotte. The frequency and intensity of their altercations escalated, amplifying her fears. She began to realize with growing dread that her safety in Fred's presence was increasingly compromised. The revelation that she had warned her children that Fred would be the one to blame if she ever vanished was nothing short of chilling. On the fateful night of July 24th, 1981, Charlotte Grabby disappeared mere miles from her home, leaving no trace behind. Jenny's chilling assertion, coupled with the letters Charlotte had left, positioned Fred as the prime suspect. Yet, Sheriff Thompson found himself at an impasse, lacking the tangible evidence necessary to substantiate Fred's alleged involvement in her disappearance. The investigation stalled, as the letters alone could not serve as proof, and Charlotte remained unaccounted for. Days later, a friend of Charlotte's arrived at the station, claiming she had seen Fred tailing Charlotte's vehicle on the highway on the day she went missing. This revelation added a disturbing layer to the unfolding drama. It was not Charlotte behind the wheel that day, but a blonde woman named Vicki Jane McAllister. Authorities promptly visited Vicki's bar, bringing both her and Fred in for questioning. When asked if she had encountered Fred on July 24th or ventured near the farm where Charlotte had last been seen, both Vicki and Fred offered nearly identical defenses, professing ignorance. Throughout the investigation, Fred's children implored him to take a polygraph test to clear his name, yet he steadfastly refused. As leads dwindled and the interrogation yielded little, the case was swiftly closed. For the next agonizing 4 years, Charlotte's family and children clung to the hope of any news regarding their beloved mother. In a desperate bid for information, they distributed reward posters, offering a substantial $25,000 for any leads on Charlotte's whereabouts, but to no avail. Ultimately, they sought the expertise of private investigator Charles Pearson, hoping he could uncover the truth. Charles embarked on his investigation by locating Vicki, discovering her residence in Indiana. He maintained a discreet distance while gradually becoming a trusted companion. Once he had gained her confidence, Charles revealed his role in the inquiry surrounding Charlotte and implored Vicki to share any pertinent information. To his astonishment, she divulged everything. The weight of a long-buried secret had tormented her for years, compelling her to recount every harrowing detail. Vicki confessed that not only had she driven Charlotte's car to the border, but she had also been a witness to the tragic murder on that fateful day, July 24th, 1981. She and Fred were already at the machine shed when Charlotte arrived, where a fierce confrontation erupted upon her discovery of Vicki and her ex-husband together. Vicki observed from a distance as Fred loomed over his slight wife, choking the life from her. Vicki McAllister recounted that Fred choked Charlotte multiple times, only to release her momentarily, allowing her to regain consciousness before resuming the assault, taunting her throughout. The horrific conclusion to Charlotte's life was followed by an even more ghastly act. Vicki recounted how Fred used a grease gun to violate her lifeless form before cramming her into a 55-gallon barrel. He then loaded the barrel onto his truck and instructed Vicky to follow him in Charlotte's Ford LTD, which was parked nearby. They journeyed to Terre Haute, Indiana, where they discarded Charlotte's vehicle, after which Vicky returned to Fred's truck. They made their way back to the farm, stopping near the Wabash River. Fred positioned the barrel beneath a maple tree and doused it in gasoline. Together they watched as Charlotte's remains were consumed by flames from a distance. The case was reopened in 1985 due to Vicky's testimony, yet the absence of physical evidence hindered any charges against Fred for the murder. The esteemed Clark County Sheriff, Red Thompson, has gracefully retired, passing the mantle to Sheriff Dan Crumrin. In a quest for truth, Sheriff Dan initiated a forensic investigation surrounding the venerable maple tree, the site where it was claimed that Charlotte met her tragic end. Forensic experts from the University of Illinois dispatched biologists to meticulously examine the tree. Vicky's account indicated that Charlotte's remains were incinerated in a particular area near the tree's base. Remarkably, only 2 of the tree's side branches bore the scars of the fire, while the rest stood untouched, a testament to the peculiar nature of the incident. In the courtroom, organic chemists presented compelling physical evidence that substantiated the claims of Charlotte's murder. They revealed that the tree's growth in 1981 had been adversely affected by a petroleum substance that had infiltrated its roots and branches. The samples collected from the tree's 5 primary branches corroborated Vicky's assertion regarding the location of the burning drum. While 3 branches remained unscathed, the 2 that had been positioned over the drum exhibited clear signs of damage. The trial against Fred Grabby commenced, and with the weight of the evidence, Vicky was granted full immunity and awarded substantial financial support for her pivotal testimony in Charlotte's case. Fred Grabby's murder trial unfolded before a jury at the Vermilion County Circuit Court in Danville, culminating in a sentence of natural life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in June 1985. Just when the Grabby family believed their suffering had reached its conclusion, fate dealt another cruel blow on March 22, 1986. Merely 6 days prior to Fred's second trial, the lifeless body of Jeff Grabby was discovered on Seal Beach in California. He had been shot twice in the head and once in the chest, his body weighted down with an anchor. However, as weeks passed and the tides shifted, the anchor released its grip, allowing the body to rise to the surface. Seal Beach police speculated that the murder was likely drug-related, yet no arrests were made due to insufficient evidence. The second trial concerning the murder of Charlotte Grabby commenced on March 28, 1986. During this period, while Fred languished in the Clark County Jail, he made a desperate bid for freedom, aided by his new romantic interest, Barbara Graham. In the early hours of July 7, 1985, at approximately 1:45 a.m., Marshall Police Chief John was on duty when Barbara approached him under the pretense of delivering a love letter to Fred. Upon opening the door, she brazenly shot him in the leg and took him hostage at gunpoint. In the ensuing chaos, Graham discharged 4 rounds, one of which grazed the uniform of Deputy Sheriff Davidson. The Marshall Police swiftly intervened, managing to subdue Graham. Barbara Graham, a 26-year-old twice-divorced mother of 3 from a neighboring town, was ultimately sentenced to 16 years in prison. The trial concluded on April 12, 1986, with the jury once again finding Fred guilty. On August 2nd, he received a sentence of 75 years, with no possibility of parole until 2022.
A tragic event unfolded outside the river crossing apartment complex in Texarkana, Texas, on June 17, 2014, claiming the life of a young man, Xavier Rawlins, a cherished 25-year-old son and dedicated Army veteran, left behind a heartbroken mother, Charlotte, who faced numerous challenges in her unwavering quest for justice. Years later, an extraordinary development would finally shed light on a case that had once appeared hopelessly elusive. Xavier, the pride of Charlotte Rawlins, shared an inseparable bond with his mother, their lives intertwined in love and unwavering support. However, their world was irrevocably altered on that fateful day when Xavier was tragically shot outside the river-crossing apartment complex on College Drive. Having transitioned from military service just 4 years prior, he was diligently working to carve out a promising future. Despite the initiation of an investigation, substantial leads remained elusive, leaving Charlotte to navigate the depths of her profound grief alone. As time passed and the case grew cold, her resolve to seek justice remained steadfast. On the 5th anniversary of Xavier's death, June 17, 2020, she orchestrated a poignant balloon release, aiming to rekindle interest in the investigation and urging anyone with information to step forward. This heartfelt gathering served not only as a tribute to Xavier, but also as a powerful reminder to the community about the devastating effects of violence and the ongoing plight of families like hers, yearning for answers. Charlotte poignantly articulated her longing for closure, stating, "If someone came forward, I would know my prayers have been answered." She also displayed a banner adorned with photographs of local crime victims, emphasizing the relentless struggle for justice that many endure. While some cases have found resolution, countless others remain unsolved, she lamented. In 2024, a significant breakthrough in the long-dormant case of Xavier Rawlins emerged, rekindling hope for his family and friends. The relentless pursuit of justice for Xavier remained unwavering, with Detective Thomas Shaddix dedicating himself to the cold case for several months. His unwavering commitment to revealing the truth led him to explore DNA testing advancements that had emerged in the last decade. Recognizing the transformative potential of this technology, he resolved to harness it, hoping to bring closure to the Rawlins family. As Detective Shaddix immersed himself in the investigation, he enlisted the expertise of the Texas Attorney General's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit, whose support proved invaluable. Their partnership was made possible through a federal grant from the Department of Justice, granting them access to a wealth of resources, including expedited forensic testing. These cutting-edge forensic techniques ultimately enabled law enforcement to identify 27-year-old Cameron Cheatham as a suspect in the tragic 2014 murder of Xavier. Following this identification, the Attorney General's office played a pivotal role in orchestrating Cheatham's arrest. Armed with the newly uncovered evidence, Detective Shaddix obtained a warrant for Cheatham, charging him with capital murder. Locating Cheatham was a fortuitous endeavor, as he was already in custody at the bi-state jail, serving time for a felony probation violation stemming from his September arrest. This development allowed the police to accelerate the legal proceedings, ensuring that justice for Xavier was within reach. On October 1st, 2024, Charlotte received the transformative call she had yearned for. The moment Detective Shaddix conveyed the news of the arrest would forever be etched in her memory. With her voice brimming with emotion, Charlotte recounted, "He said, 'We made an arrest,' and I just erupted into screams and shouts. It felt as if I had just given birth for the first time. It was a moment of realization that justice for my baby was finally on the horizon." She remarked, "I possess between 30 and 40 shirts adorned with his image. No matter where I ventured, his visage was ever present." In the wake of his arrest, Cheatham was formally charged with capital murder, with a staggering bond established at $1 million. The impending trial instilled a renewed sense of purpose and closure, rekindling the hope that had dimmed over the years.
A harrowing revelation emerged on April 19, 1982, when the lifeless body of a woman was discovered in a drainage culvert in Odessa, Texas. This heinous act of violence, marked by assault and murder, eluded resolution for nearly 40 years. Investigators encountered numerous obstacles in their quest for justice, yet a remarkable breakthrough ultimately unveiled the identity of the perpetrator. Velma Nesset, born on December 11, 1916, made the decision to leave her childhood home and settle in Odessa, Texas. As she approached her 60s, Velma embraced a life of tranquility and modesty. However, everything changed on that fateful day in April when she was 65 years old. A devoted and diligent employee at Perrin Mall, Velma maintained a routine of walking to and from work, a practice she had followed for years without incident. On that particular day, her absence from work raised immediate alarm among her colleagues. As time passed without any word from her, her family and friends grew increasingly anxious and initiated a search. When hours turned into a desperate search, her loved ones reported her missing to the Odessa Police Department. The ensuing search yielded a heart-wrenching discovery. Velma was found in a drainage culvert, partially unclothed, having suffered a brutal assault and murder. In the wake of this tragedy, the Odessa Police Department swiftly apprehended a suspect who confessed to the horrific crime, leading to hopes of swift justice for Velma's family. Yet during the trial in 1983, the case took an unexpected twist. Despite the confession, the suspect was acquitted due to insufficient evidence and what was later revealed to be a false admission of guilt. Following this shocking verdict, both the Texas Rangers and the Odessa Police Department persisted in their investigation into Velma's case. Unfortunately, despite their relentless efforts, the investigation eventually went cold, with leads evaporating and no further arrests made, leaving her family in a state of unresolved grief. Velma's tragic case lingered in the shadows of unsolved mysteries, with authorities diligently striving to secure justice for her untimely death. In 2020, the cold case of Velma Nesset garnered renewed focus as it became a pivotal part of the Texas Department of Public Safety's Sexual Assault Kit initiative. This initiative, designed to tackle unresolved crimes, allocated essential funding for cutting-edge DNA analysis and genealogical exploration. With the evolution of forensic science, investigators were optimistic about uncovering fresh leads in this decades-old enigma, aiming to finally hold Velma's assailant accountable. The outcomes of the testing were nothing short of revolutionary. Through meticulous genealogical investigation, a potential suspect emerged, 62-year-old Billy Wayne Ludwigson. This revelation marked a significant milestone, establishing a connection between Ludwigson and a crime that had eluded resolution for nearly 40 years. Following this initial identification, investigators proceeded with standard forensic DNA testing to validate their findings. The results confirmed their suspicions. Ludwigson was indeed the individual responsible for the tragic fate of Velma Nesset. At the time of the heinous act, Ludwigson was merely 20 years old, a young man whose involvement in the brutal assault had remained concealed for decades. The revelation of his identity brought long-awaited clarity to the questions that had tormented Velma's family and the Odessa community for nearly 4 decades. For the investigators, identifying Ludwigson represented a monumental advancement in the case. After years of frustration and dead ends, they finally possessed a suspect whose DNA unequivocally linked him to the crime scene. This pivotal evidence rekindled hope for those who had relentlessly sought justice for Velma. On July 30, 2020, after years of uncertainty, a Texas Ranger and an Odessa Police Department detective journeyed to Denver, Colorado, where they apprehended Ludwigson. During their investigation, they secured his confession, further cementing his connection to the crime. The arrest represented a significant turning point in the long-standing case, finally bringing Velma's alleged assailant into custody after nearly 4 decades. Following his apprehension, Ludwigson was extradited to Texas, where he was set to confront the consequences of his actions. On August 18, 2020, an Ector County grand jury formally indicted Ludwigson for the tragic loss of Velma's life. Opting to plead guilty, he acknowledged his involvement in the heinous act, thus sparing the family the anguish of a protracted trial and granting them a long-awaited sense of closure. While the passage of time could never be reversed, his plea facilitated the advancement of the legal proceedings without further hindrance. On August 9, 2024, an Ector County jury sentenced Ludwigson to 20 years in prison. Although this judgment arrived more than 40 years after the crime, it ultimately delivered a semblance of justice for Velma and her grieving family.